So what's it really like to live in Massachusetts? I'm Jane. Welcome to my channel, Living in the Boston Suburbs. I'm here to share some fun information about what life is really like in Massachusetts. My husband and I grew up here, and we've raised 3 kids here, and we've lived in Greater Boston almost all of our lives. I love to share information about what makes Massachusetts a unique and beautiful place to live. Are you considering relocating to Massachusetts? Make sure you subscribe, as each week I release a video on a different suburb in Greater Boston. I love to hear from my viewers, so feel free to reach out with a question or a comment and I will respond. My Boston accent is optional. The first thing you need to know is that not everyone does have the famous Boston accent. I have good friends, they lived in Florida and Atlanta. So they had checked into a hotel and they were looking for a place to go for breakfast. So they went down to the desk clerk and said, "Where should we go for breakfast?" And she said, "Bigford's." And they said, "What?" And she said, "Bigford's." And all they heard was big, something that started with an F, so they kind of slunk away. That was before Google told you where to go to breakfast. So this same couple ended up being our neighbors across the street. The husband said to the wife, "Now, people are not the same up here. You can't just go walking up to people and talking to them." So the very first neighbor that she met was me. We had bought a rundown house across the street, which literally looked like a crack house. I was hustling over there to explain that we were indeed going to fix it up quickly, and we have been friends ever since. So in general, we are friendly, though we probably won't say hello to you on the sidewalk. We tend to move fast, we drive aggressively. Generally, we're in a hurry. We also think we're pretty smart. However, we are the most highly educated state in the nation. People in Massachusetts really value education. We have over 100 colleges and universities in the state and 35 in Boston. A lot of people come here to go to school and end up staying here for work. So I would say that half of our friends here have relocated from somewhere else. One of the things we are famous for is our hospitals. If you work in the medical field, or if you just need a hospital, then you are in a great place if you're in Massachusetts. We are top ranked in the country, and we are also ranked 2nd in the world for our prestigious hospitals. We have a really diverse job market. We have everything from finance to tech to life sciences, biosciences, a lot of people who work in medicine and education. And a couple of very well-known companies that are headquartered here are General Electric, Gillette, Fidelity, and Liberty Mutual. Another great thing about living here is our 4 seasons of beauty. Now, our winters can be long. However, there's a saying that if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. So last week, for example, the last week of February, weather on Wednesday was over 60 degrees, was setting records. Friday, we had a snowstorm and it got down to the teens. So you do get a little bit of whiplash on the weather. Some years we'll get next to no snow, and then some years we get inundated. So here's a picture from 2015, which is the last year that we had tons of snow. But it was literally, the snowbanks were like 4 feet up on either side of our walk. If you'd like my relo guide, make sure you drop me a comment and I can email it to you. It gives a little synopsis on all the towns in Greater Boston. Another great thing about living here is we are rich in culture and history. And we're very proud of our culture and history. You will never run out of sights to see, from the cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill to Lexington and Concord, where the American Revolution started. And it's Concord, not Concord. One trip that I always plan for people visiting from out of state is the Freedom Trail. There's a walk through downtown Boston of historic buildings. You go by the USS Constitution, also known as Old Ironsides, which has a museum. There's a great museum called the Boston Tea Party Museum, where they reenact tossing the tea in the harbor. You can see Paul Revere's original home in the North End, and also the Old North Church, which is famous for 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. One of my favorite towns is Concord. Okay, I grew up in Lexington, which is right next door. First skirmish with the British was on the Lexington Green. There is an awesome reenactment every April 19th. Sadly, we lost. So the Minutemen and chased the Redcoats to Concord, where there was a big win at the Concord Bridge. So Concord is beautiful. It's a gorgeous town center, lots of history, and Walden Pond, and also some historic homes that you can visit. One of my favorites is the Orchard House, where Louisa May Alcott grew up with her sisters, and she's, of course, the author of Little Women. We have museums all the way out to the west part of the state. One that I have not visited yet, but is very intriguing, is the Eric Carle Museum from the Very Hungry Caterpillar fame. That whole area is beautiful. There's mountains, that's where Tanglewood is, where the Boston Pops plays in the summer, and also there's a Norman Rockwell Museum in Williamstown, Mass, which is really cool. One of the things that is great about Massachusetts and New England is how compact it is. New England is full of interesting small cities like Portland, Maine, and Providence, Rhode Island, and Newport, Rhode Island. Those are great towns where you can make a really fun day trip. You can be on beautiful beaches within an hour. You can be on Cape Cod, the Cape, and hop on a ferry to Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket, which is just an hour and a half from Boston. The ferry is an hour and a half from Boston. We also have beaches on the South Shore and the North Shore, so you don't even actually have to go all the way to the Cape. The water's cold, I will say that. For mountains, for skiing, you can be at major Vermont resorts in 3 hours for great skiing. New Hampshire is even a little bit closer, and we even have a few smaller, like Mount Wachusett is a great local place where kids go on the half day. They'll do ski instructions on Wednesday afternoons. That's just about 40 minutes from Boston. One of the things I did not appreciate about Massachusetts until I had moved away was how good the seafood is. So when you're a kid and you're used to it, you're like, what's the big deal? But I spent a year in the Midwest, and I found that I was definitely craving some fresh seafood. And yes, we do all make the lobster joke when we're eating it in my house. A negative about living in our area is it is expensive. Houses, if you're like within 15 miles of downtown Boston, housing is very expensive. However, if you are not commuting to downtown and you're willing to go further out, there are definitely some more affordable towns. So if that sounds like something that might work for you, just drop me a note and we can talk about what would be some good options. And finally, we are of course famous for having the best sports teams in the world and the most rabid fans. Isn't this what your mom wears to the Super Bowl when she watches it on TV? It hasn't been the same around here since Tom Brady left us and then retired. Onward we go. One interesting thing to note compared to other states is that our college sports is not quite as fanatical as our pro sports fans. There's the famous Beanpot hockey tournament for the schools like Harvard, BU, and BC. And UMass has its moments. Generally, it's not like being in Alabama and Rolling Tide. So there you have it, the top things to know about living in Massachusetts. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions, subscribe to my channel, and let me know what town you'd like to hear about next.